Buongiorno, buonasera, benvenuti amici. Welcome, my friends. My name is Vincenzo, and welcome to my channel. And the channel is Fountain Pen Therapy. What kind of therapy do I have for you today? Well, I have a Hongdian pen, finally. I find that compared to some of the other Chinese pen makers like Asvine and Majon, who have been giving us beautiful offerings, I've got to tell you, some a little more controversial than others, but and Asvine has just come out with a new pen, and we'll get to that in due course. Hongdian was kind of, slow in terms of their own offerings. It's reminding me a little bit of what happened to Pen BBS. That I forget the year, but several years ago, or Pen BBS were coming out with pens like, 1, 2 a week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, there was a new pen. And Hongdian, did that a couple of years ago as well, where we were getting all these different types of materials, different models, designs, all original, different nibs. And I find that Hongdian this year has kind of been a little slow in producing pens. And with all the other exciting pens, I think they're exciting pens, what Asvine and Majon are giving us. And even some of the others like Admoc and Lemon, etc. And they've come up with a new pen. It kind of, I have mixed feelings about this pen, but not because of the quality of the pen necessarily, or the design of the pen, but just where does it fit in terms of the market. In any event, I'm looking forward to reviewing it for you. I think it's important that you, the viewers, get a look at it in case you are considering it. And it's the new Hongdian A10. Yes, the wooden pen. Another wooden pen for Hongdian. Let's take a look at it. We'll go down and see whether or not this is going to be another wood disaster, or whether or not it's going to live up to the excellent reputation that Hongdian has. So stay tuned. Fountain Pen Therapy presents the Hongdian A10. So we're back, and here's the pen. I'm going to tell you, when you look at this pen, it is a very, very nice writing instrument. Now, you may or may not be a fan of wood. I'm not a market analyst. I'm a fountain pen enthusiast that surfs the net constantly, and I start to look at trends. And I listened to other reviews, and I mentioned to you that at one point Fude Fan told us that at least in Japan, these wood is kind of a little bit of a craze. Everybody's looking at wood in their pens, be they mechanical pencils, be they ballpoints, roller balls, or fountain pens. Wancher is always offering us products made out of wood. So the Japanese, I I believe, are really into this. But I've seen a lot of Chinese offerings, kind of at least dabbling with wood, some with more success than others. But there you have it. This is the Hongdian A10. We'll take a look at where it fits in terms of design and comparison to other pens in a second, but I thought we'd take a closer look at the pen itself. Got to tell you, the first reaction I had, I think it comes in two colors. It comes in this brown, and I think it comes in black. I love this brown. When you touch this pen, there is some varnish on it that gives it just a little bit of coating. It's not too shiny. It's not matte. It's somewhere in between. You can definitely see the wood. Beautiful. Just in terms of feel and look, very, very nice. Let's start with the clip. The clip is very, very stiff. I'm not even sure whether or not it's usable, frankly. But there is a nice finial there. I think there is somewhere in there Hongdian's logo, but it's a nice touch. It gives it a little more character. The bottom finial is just pointed. There's not much there. In terms of the center band, you have Hongdian A10. It's gold, but it's kind of rose gold, which matches very nicely with the wood. Now, all the finishing is in my view very nice. There's nothing sticking out. There's a little bit of sharpness there when you just put your hands, but it's otherwise very well integrated. So as usual, Hongdian does make a good product. Now, in terms of opening it up, let's see how many turns. That's one. It's 1 1/4, 1 1/2, 1 3/4, 2, 2 1/4, 2 1/2, 2 3/4, 3, 3 1/2, 3, 4. We're getting into 4. Oh. That's not what it is it, folks? No, the surprise is that this is a magnetic pen. So when we're talking about closure, it's automatically. It's one of the nice features of this pen. The magnet is really, really strong. I got to tell you, you play around with it, very satisfying. I wish Visconti had the strength of this magnet. Sometimes I wonder in this Visconti pens whether or not I'm just playing around with them in the wrong way, because over time they kind of loosen up. Not the more expensive ones that have the turn features, but I have a Van Gogh, I have Rembrandts, and you get the feeling that with time that magnet closure just doesn't have the same strength. But I got to tell you, this one works very nicely, very, very nicely. So yes, it is magnetic. Let's go back to the screwing. I can show you it is it's filled already. Typical Hongdian converter. It's metal on metal. And I got to tell you, very satisfying. Look at that. Does very nicely. There is no O-ring there. I don't think that would, keep this closed. But it closes nicely. And one of the things that we're going to be looking at is, I noticed here that the wood is exposed. Do you see that? You kind of see the wood structure of the pen, and I'm a little bit concerned about that, and I'll get to that in a second. We can see that elsewhere, but having, especially if you're going to put this under water to give it a rinse, got to be careful. In terms of the flare, it's small. It's a slimmish pen, okay? It's not a big pen, and we'll do some comparisons in just a minute or two. There is a nice decorative ring there, or band. Some people don't like that because when it comes time to ink, that can, you can have a lot of ink gather there, and then it's a real pain. But I mean, it means a few more seconds in terms of wiping out the section when you do ink your pen. So I don't believe that that's a major factor. Let's take a look at this nib. Now, this nib, as you can see, it has that design, and then it has 1997 underneath. This is the new design, or the new version, if you will, the most recent version of the Hongdian nibs. I wish they had more, they only have extra fine and fine. I haven't seen medium now with this pen. And the feed is the new feed that Hongdian has been using for quite a while. But here again, question is, how will this nib perform? And we'll get to that in a second. But that's another disappointment in my mind, and I'll explain that in just a few seconds. So there you have it. The pen is comfortable. It's not very small pen, but it's not even medium size. I would say to you, it's kind of a slim, medium-sized pen. Very comfortable. This wood, that's I think the greatest feature of this pen is the wood. The feeling in your hands of the wood doesn't slip. Very nice. Does it post? Yes, it posts very comfortably, deeply and securely. And I think it gives this pen a little more oomph in terms of the writing experience. So once in a while you do have a pen that is it's preferable to Post-it. This may very well be one of those pens. So there you have it. Now, let's take a look at what we see inside here. Okay, I always like to take a look at whether or not. Now, when I look in there, and I'm not sure the camera's going to pick this up. There is a portion there that definitely tells us that this pen, it's got a section, will be well sealed. I see a plastic liner for about half the way, but then do you see that wood right there at the top? Right underneath the gold band, the wood is exposed. And I think the wood is exposed even further down the pen as well. So I see wood there. When I say exposed, I mean it hasn't been varnished or treated in any way. Some of the other pen makers, what they do is they envelope, there's a sleeve inside the cap that completely covers and insulates the wood. This doesn't appear to have that. The same thing, I mentioned to you, I could see the wood exposed there. So and it's too late because I inked this, but I imagine that when we remove that nib, all of the wood structure underneath here does not appear to be treated, although there may be a metal sleeve there. But the wood is also exposed here. I don't know if you see that. Right underneath the ring or the gold band, the screwing mechanism, the entire wooden interior of the pen is exposed right to the bottom. So you got to be careful. I have a tendency my rule is that when I wash out my pens, I rinse them under water. I don't treat them with any chemicals of any sort unless I have a major issue, and I let them dry overnight, and then when it's time to reassemble them, if there's some water, I could use a cloth or some paper products to just make sure all of the water is gathered and treated. But this may very well have an issue. Sometimes there's leakage of ink, so you want to wash it out. And how will it react to water or to ink, for that matter, it remains to be seen. So that's a little bit of a disappointment from Hongdian. I would have expected a little bit better, especially given their track record with wooden pens, and I'll get to that in a minute. So that is the pen in terms of its features and design. The design is it resembles some of their other pens, and we'll take a look at that in a second. But that's it for the pen itself. Why don't we take a look at some comparisons and some previous wooden pens from Hongdian, and I'll be right back. Okay, so some of the things I wanted to mention, and it's most unfortunate because Hongdian is one of my favorite pen manufacturers. So, I don't enjoy doing this, but it's something I need to mention. This is my N24. Now, I think that this pen, and some of you might think it's over the top, is a beautiful writing instrument. I don't use it often. It's more a collection piece than anything else. But the first experience I had with it when it was delivered to me in Canada during the winter, is the barrel cracked on me. It wasn't cracked, and I forget now which one, but I believe the first one wasn't cracked when I got it, but it kind of cracked over time and very quickly, not because I dropped it. In fact, one of my viewers mentioned to me that while I was reviewing the pen, he had noticed a crack, and I had not noticed it. And so the alert went out. I sent it back, and they sent me another cap, and this cap cracked as well, as you can see right there, just very shortly after having received it. So I had two bad experiences, only to say that they gave it another go. And that other go, now unless I see a crack that I haven't seen because I haven't used this pen in months, but no, it's resisted over time. And this is a gorgeous, gorgeous pen, and with a very nice nib as well. So, like I said, this is more of a collection piece than anything else. But they did manage to succeed at the end of the day. The next one was this one. Now, this is the A7. This is the first purchase, and this thing, this section just removed. Okay, you can see it moves. Now it's inked, as you can see. It's all unglued. Okay, and it's too bad. So that was my second experience, and I believe it was the second experience with Hongdian with a wooden pen. And now the wood here has been treated, so the cracking, I think, is minimized, except that it was ungluing. And from what I understand, it was a common problem. It wasn't just my problem with my pen. And that's when they came out with a modified A7. You can see that the wood here is treated, but it's a little more matte finish. So far, that section is not unglued, although I've been told by other viewers that theirs did. Now, is that another common problem? I'm not sure. I've not seen it very often mentioned, so I have to assume that anybody who did have an unglued section is the exception as opposed to the rule. But those were my two previous experiences with wood in Hongdian pens. So this one is not cracked yet. It appears to be a success, at least so far. I've not heard any rumblings about cracks and in the pen itself. Other reviewers have also mentioned the wood issue, that it's exposed, and we'll see how that. Now, just to take a look at this pen, the interior of this pen, you can see there's a huge plastic sleeve that kind of covers the entire interior. That eliminates effectively the problem of exposed wood. What about my A7? Same here. I don't see any wood per se. There's a plastic sleeve in there, and I don't see it in my A10, which is unfortunate. But we'll see how this reacts over time. So that's in terms of my comparison with other wood Hongdian pens. Let's take a look at a more general comparison, and I will back up a little bit my camera so you can take a look at all the pens I have in this tray. First thing, the other wood I forgot to mention is this one that I have from Hongdian. This is very nice. I've not have an issue with that, but because it's a combination, so there's no issue of wood exposure. Obviously, the the cap is metal. This is one of my favorite Hongdian pens, but only because I changed the nib, and I'll explain that in a second. But having said that, in fact, this is the pen that's tempting me to buy a few Faber-Castell pens, because it does kind of imitate slightly, or it does resemble the Faber-Castell, and they're in my cart all the time. I own, I think, some very very inexpensive Faber-Castells, but it's something I want to venture into in terms of my bucket list. This is a comparison of other wooden pens. So I do have the other Hongdian. I think this is the 1866. 1866 Max. This is a bigger pen. This is the Majon M1000. This is the Jinhao. Is it 82 or 58? I keep forgetting. I'll put it on the screen. And this is one of the many Jinhao wooden pens. There's 9036, 9056. Not a great nib. That's unfortunate. But the pen, and you got metal cap. But the pen has resisted over time. There's been no cracking, and it is another wooden pen in my collection. Then, of course, you have my Asvine. They had a drying issue problem, but I didn't hear about any cracking in the wood. It's treated very nicely, and of course, a completely different style. In terms of model, as you can see, I compare it to some of my other. It kind of compares nicely to this, and I keep forgetting the number. This is the N1, and I believe this is the N12. That's correct. You can see the N12 is bigger both in girth and in length. The N1 is very similar, but yet different. It's got a different barrel as compared to the A10. So the A10 is situated somewhere in between those two, or it's a little thinner than those two other pens. So those are the pens capped. Here are the pens uncapped, and as you can see, uncapped, it takes on the same size as the N12 and is bigger than the N1. It's essentially the same size as the 1866 and the Jinhao. The first Jinhao. This other Jinhao is a little bit bigger, but not by much. And it even rivals the M1000, which is a big pen. So it's got a longer body and a shorter cap, if you will, or barrel and a shorter cap. And that's why it's very comfortable in your hands. It's a little thinner, as thin as I would say the 1866. But there you have it in terms of comparison, uncapped. Here's a comparison of the pens posted. They all post nicely except my M1000. And as you can see, I think it's a very comfortable posting of the pen, similar to the N12. Well, the N12 may have a little issue with the piston knob, but as you can see, some of the pens become a little too big. The 58 is a little bit too long. So is the Asvine C2000. I like the way this pen posts. It posts just right, very comfortable, no back weight, and it makes the pen even more comfortable, I would say, to you posted. So there you have the pens compared, posted. What we'll do is we will discuss one more thing before we do some measurements and the writing sample. What I wanted to mention is that Hongdian, here you have Majon, Asvine, Wing Sung, going with the big pens, right? You have the 630, you have the 930, you have the P140, the P141, the P139 for Majon. We have the C80, the C2000, both in the wood and in the ebonite. We now have the new Asvine V800, which looks like a big vacuum filler, Mont Blanc style. So they're going for the big pens. Whereas Hongdian, presents this nice slim looking pen. And that just demonstrates to me that Hongdian is really playing more to the Asian market than it does for the North American market. I think Asvine it's become very clear that they've kind of catering a little more to the North American or the Western market, if you will, with these bigger pens. So is Mahjong and so is Wing Sung, whereas Hongdian, I think, is sticking to its guns. And the same thing goes for the nib. They're not giving you these big, juicy 1.1 stubs or, the 930 broad, which is just a gusher of a nib. You have these very fine writing instruments in terms of their nibs. And I think it's just a question of which market are they focusing on. At least that's my opinion. I'm not a market analyst, but that's what I notice in terms of trends, which leads me to, let's do some measurements and then we'll take a look at that nib and why I'm very disappointed. We'll be right back. Okay, so we're back for the writing sample. First of all, the paper I'm using is this Tomo River paper from the Yamamoto paper company. It's the original Tomo River, so that's the writing pad. And the ink that I'm putting in is this newly acquired Noce Moscata brown ink from Leonardo. I've been reviewing these inks in my recaps, and this one will be reviewed in detail. Was reviewed in the most recent recap. Noce Moscata brown ink with their new bottles. Very nice ink, and I've kind of quickly fallen in love with it. I think it's become one of my favorite browns, and that's the ink that I've put into this pen. So we will do the writing sample now. Let me just focus in a little more. Okay, here we go. So, this is the Hongdian A10. And I'm just going to put the microphone really close so you can hear. Now, here's where the disappointment is. I was under the impression, but I was told that there was an issue, that these new nibs that Hongdian came up with, the new versions, were bouncy, soft. They just had a little bit of, they weren't flex nibs, but they had some softness to them. They had some little bit of spring, which made them very, very nice. And I'll show you the difference in one of my other pens in a second. This one is stiff. So in terms of, it's very stiff. It's, in fact, not only, it's just another nail. And it has also a little more feedback than that I appreciate. Which makes it takes away some of its smoothness, I would say to you. Now, some of it is due to the fact that it is a fine, but it's just a little too much. Just a little too much feedback in my view. And as you can see, there's no line variation whatsoever. I mean, it doesn't flow or glide on the paper. It kind of fights the paper without being scratchy. It is very consistent, I would say to you. I don't have any false starts, but it's dry. Dry. It is not a wet pen, put it this way. Now, this ink is a very good ink. In any other pen, like in a medium, it would flow really nicely. So I think it's aiding and abetting, if you will, this nib. But it's not a wet nib. Far from it. But because the ink is so performing, you could see that it does have some wetness after all. But you've got to use a wet ink. If you use a dry ink in here, I think it's a bad combination. But there is no spring at all in this nib. Reverse writing, it actually works, but again, very dry. I would say to you, dry, and you're going to get an extra fine line. Okay, so I don't know if you can hear that. It's not a very nice feedback in my view. But again, I don't want to give you the impression that it's a scratchy nib. I think that in the ideal world, what I will do with this nib is either change it. It's unfortunate because I like its colors, kind of got that rose gold and matches the trimmings, etc. I'm going to have to find another nib that fits in there. But I might do what to this pen, what is in my 1866, which is replace it with this lemon hand-polished nib. In fact, I believe that if you buy this pen from 365 Stationery store on AliExpress, they offer different nib choices. So they'll give you the original nib, but they'll also throw in other nibs depending on what your choice is. There's a premium for it. I ordered this pen as soon as it came out, and that's always because I try to do it as quickly as possible for you guys. Had I waited, I would definitely have gone for a little more and just get alternative nibs so that I'm sure that at the end of the day I get a good one. So this is a stiff nib, and when you compare it to, just for example, this is the Hongdian A10. I don't know if you can see that, but the nib does give me a little more bounce, and the feedback is a little more pleasurable. And the writing experience is so much nicer. So at the end of the day, I think what I noticed is that it's either a quality control issue where the nibs that are coming out are not all the same, so it's kind of hit and miss, or they have two versions. And I noticed that in some of the offerings they do say soft flexi nib, and maybe that's when they say that you're getting the flexi or the bouncy new version, and when they say nothing, it's maybe the stiff version. Again, very difficult to, I don't know who to reach at Hongdian. I have no idea how to even get in contact with them to kind of, give us some information. And that's one of the problems with these Chinese pen companies. There's no, contact us here and ask questions, etc. It's very difficult. Maybe some people know how to get in touch with them. You can get in touch with their vendors, but I'm not sure how much information they'll be able to give you. But so there you have it. It's kind of hit and miss. Because of that nib, I got to tell you, when we look at likes and dislikes, I like the wood material on this pen. I like its design. It's a slimmish pen, so if you like big pens, this is not a pen for you. But if you like, smaller pens, very comfortable. But in terms of dislikes, the nib, I think, is too stiff. Don't like the feedback. It's just a little too much. So just to finish my thoughts, I'm either going to replace the nib or I'm going to fine-tune it and get it to be a little more wet and a little smoother. But, you know, I'm showing you the pen right out of the box. And I don't like the interior exposed wood. So what I'm going to do now, just for you folks, is that I'm going to work on this pen and be right back and see if it's giving me a better writing performance. Now you've seen out of the box. Here's after I play with it a little bit. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. All I did is kind of just use some of this micro mesh and played around with it a little bit, you know, just a few circling motions, etc., just to give it a little more smoothness. Sometimes that's enough to make it a little bit wetter. Let's just see how this works out. Well, there you go. Already the writing experience is better. I think that if I continue to work on it, I will get that bad feedback completely out of the pen, and even the flow, I would say to you, is a little bit better. The next thing I would want to do is open it up a little bit, so I'll be right back. Okay, I'm right back. I just I used these kind of gauges. I only managed to be able to put 0.03 in terms of thickness. Sometimes I succeed with 4 and 5, but here I couldn't fit the 5 or the 4, so I'm at 3. It did manage to, and you can tell right away that, look at this. It's wet now. It's becoming wetter and wetter, and that ink is finally, I could see it. It's not as dry. This feedback is still there. So my feeling is that if I play with this nib even further, I'll get it probably to where I want it to be in terms of writing experience. It's now sounding a little more like pencil feedback as opposed to that very disturbing feedback. But as you can see, I mean, don't get me wrong, the nib performs very well. It's just very dry, and that's not the way I like my pens, but some of you might like it that way. So there you have it. Thought I'd give you that additional demonstration. So that's the Hongdian A10. Do I recommend it? No. I think there's other, I mean, if you like slim pens with a very fine line and don't mind the feedback, there's nothing wrong with this pen, don't get me wrong. In terms of my priorities, I even hesitated to review this pen because I wasn't pleased with it. But I just don't like the idea of Hongdian not telling us or being very clear with what kind of nib I'm getting. I think that if I would have gotten that softer new version, this pen would be quite different, and the writing experience would be different. If you like wood, beautiful pen. If you're going to buy this pen, and it's not expensive, it's not $70 like the Asvines or $40 like some of the other Asvines. It's in, you know, I think it's going for last time I checked, Well, not really. It's last time I checked, there you have it. It's $40. So you know what? It's not as cheap as I thought. $40 Canadian. I thought it was much cheaper than that. I'm not sure I can give it a 10 on 10, just because of that nib. And I just enjoy bigger pens, but that's very subjective, very subjective. But like I said, at least there's a new offering there. Let's see what else they come up with this year, Hongdian. There you have it. A little bit of a disappointment, but not a great disappointment. Do I regret buying it? No. Would I buy it again? Probably. Do I recommend it to you? If you have other priorities and other likes and dislikes, and depending on where you sit in terms of that spectrum, in terms of size, etc., there you have it. Thank you very much for joining me once again. Please subscribe. It always helps the algorithm, and it's free subscription. So if you like it, please let us know. If you don't like it, please let me know. And stay tuned for my next review. And don't forget my weekly recap every Sunday. Ciao.